Elvis, the Baz Luhrmann uh, biopic, epic
Yep.
biopic, I'll say. Um, Looking at the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Boy, why don't we start here, Dave? What's your relationship with Elvis? You a big fan?
That's a good question. I think obviously Elvis is well before my time, but also, my parents are old, but they're kind of right after the Elvis generation.
Mm.
My parents' friends that are older than them were Elvis people. So I didn't really like hear a whole lot of Elvis like in the home per se, but there's a lot of, I think Americana trademarks and things about Elvis Presley, the man, and some of his music that has obviously persisted to this day. And that's kind of my knowledge of Elvis growing up. And I think, the critical re examination of the influences within his music and where the credit was and was not given is a particular interest. I think that's more of a newer conversation. But um, I was definitely looking forward to this movie because I think the Elvis Presley story is obviously super ripe for the musical biopic treatment.
Yeah. So mom, my mom's side of the family really loved Elvis. I had listened to him a lot growing up. I think I know probably the hits.
Right.
But by the time I was really getting into music, and when you go back, there's just such a delineation between Elvis's time and then you get into like the Beatles
Correct.
and Rolling Stones, and that sort of music just interested me so much more. So I never really like dug in, and I kind of don't care about Elvis at this point, to be honest. I agree. I think the
Hey.
critical re-examination of his music
Mm.
is really fascinating, but it kind of just like highlights how him as a celebrity was more did more as like a bridge of white culture and black culture more than him maybe being this really talented genius of an artist. And
Mhm.
I think the movie actually does a pretty good job of displaying that. But before we get too far into it, Baz Luhrmann I think is another person we need to kind of
Yeah.
talk about as what's our relationship to him, right? And so I've seen Moulin Rouge, I've seen The Great Gatsby, and that's about it from
Right.
his
I've seen
um,
Romeo and Juliet as
Romeo plus
well. I think
Juliet.
I've seen some of Australia.
And so I really like Moulin Rouge. Definitely his most beloved movie. Gatsby got some recognition, but overall, not my favorite. And so going into this, I was kind of like, if this is more Moulin Rouge than Gatsby, I think I'll really enjoy this. And I feel like it kind of fell in the middle. I think there's some
Huh.
moments that really work
Interesting.
in this. I think there's some moments that I just there's some choice in this that really don't
Right.
work for me. What's your feeling towards Lerman though?
Yeah, I think he's a very interesting, talented filmmaker, a very unique guy who, I mean, this is only his sixth feature film. Gatsby was 2013, and since then he made the short-lived Get Down series on
Hmm.
Netflix. He's takes his time with his projects, but he's someone with a unique point of view. He's a stylist, right? He's kind of in the same realm as Zack Snyder, honestly, right? He's got a clear point of view. He's going to approach things in a certain way. And it kind of makes sense that Elvis Presley is the subject of the Baz Luhrmann musical biopic, just the way that The Great Gatsby was the subject of his literary adaptation, a very multifaceted, challenging to adapt uh, uh, American novel. That was the thing he wanted to adapt. Elvis, of all people, the big personality, that's his music biopic. It all kind of makes sense to me. Uh, and I think there's a bit of Moulin Rouge in this movie for sure. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like a huge relationship with Baz. I think that's also just because, like I said, he doesn't
He doesn't work a
work
lot.
a lot.
Yep.
But when he does work, it's definitely something that's his. And I think that's pretty commendable that he is a filmmaker with a unique style and vision, even if sometimes that can get in his own way. Uh, Overall, though, I did enjoy Elvis. It's a flawed movie, it's super long, but I had a really good time with it. And I think a big part of that is because Austin Butler is really convincing as Elvis Presley.
Yeah, I think Butler's performance is really great, and I think the really hard part about the way that is told, that the plot of the movie is told, is that it should have just been Butler driving the story, and instead there's this choice to make Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, the person
Right.
telling the story. Now that is a very Lerman choice, from my understanding of what I've seen, and he does like to have kind of this like narrator type figure who's not the central character to the story, but kind of telling of this broader
Mhm.
figure in the story.
Yeah.
But man, I could have gone if Tom Hanks just like passingly came in through the movie and then back out. I would have enjoyed this movie 110% more. Oh man, I really hated his performance as Colonel Tom Parker. What about you?
Yeah, so it's been getting pretty widely panned, and yeah, I thought it was a poor performance. He's just kind of doing a peculiar accent for this
Mhm.
character. Of course, the Colonel was it the
Dutch
Netherlands? Yeah,
American.
right. So, and nebulous beginnings in terms of tried to claim he was the citizen of no country when he eventually got sued for his mismanagement of the Elvis estate, things like that. Um, but yeah, there's just so much of the Colonel, and it's frustrating because often it kind of retreads ground, the scenes with the Colonel, because you kind of already get it. And even though this is such a long movie and it moves so quickly, there's also so much stuff that's just not given the time it needs or greatly ignored when it comes to the Elvis Presley story. And I think that's why it can be frustrating to watch this movie because like there's so much like good stuff here. That's why the Elvis story is so ripe for this biopic treatment, because there's so much engaging pulpy material about Elvis himself. We don't have to get bogged down in the Colonel screwing him over every single time. We get it, you know.
Yep.
Now, if Tom Hanks was better in the role, maybe it's more forgiving. But I was also kind of frustrated with the narration coming in and out in general. It was kind of like an annoying framing device, and because the Colonel's the one telling us the story, obviously this movie then is not equipped to uh, explain, even comment on Elvis's relationship with the black artist that he loved. You know, they do at least nod to it, acknowledge it,
Mhm.
but they're just not in a position to say anything further because it's being told in the moment. I guess it makes sense. They really can't present this like more modern view of everything
Mhm.
when they're talking about things as it's happening. But in place of that, we're just spending so much time with the Colonel. It's the snowman. It's just it's a bit of an annoying choice. But I mean, the set pieces though, like those key set pieces when there's like these big Elvis performances, these famous landmark performances at various stages of his career, those scenes are really awesome and
Yeah.
fun to be with. And in general, this movie did make me want to listen to some Elvis, and I think that's a sign of it being at least somewhat successful. I definitely went and watched the "If I Can Dream" performance from his comeback special, and I watched the real thing, and like it's fucking great. And
Mhm.
that scene in particular I thought was super powerful.
Yeah, I agree. There's like two or three set pieces in this that are just absolutely dynamite and just suck you in, and then the movie comes screeching to a halt when Colonel Parker is screaming about how they have to do a Christmas song, or he's kind of like, "Ooh, what's the scheme going to be this time? Let's put all this merchandise out," and you're just like, "Ah, man, like I just really want to be with this character again." Another issue I kind of had with the movie, and I think this is more so a issue with the framing device from Colonel Parker's perspective, is you have these moments of huge American historical history that are mentioned. Martin Luther King's passing and then RFK's
Yep.
assassination. And Elvis is kind of like put in this position where are you going to say something and risk your commercial appeal, or are you going to kind of continue to like not put yourself out there in that way in order to sell as many whatevers as you want? I I did not know this about Elvis as a person, that he felt, had these political feelings and wanted this.
Mhm.
And it almost feels a bit kind of like random in a sense, because I think when you know this, what people know about the story of Elvis is this like really quick rise to fame, this like juggernaut who then kind of becomes a sellout and gets addicted to drugs and becomes fat and is just like this caricature of himself near the end of his life in his 40s. And the pacing of this and the choices of what they choose to show just feel a bit confusing, right? Because you don't even get really to like enjoy him just like running around Memphis with his friends or running around
Yeah.
Vegas with his crew. You don't really even get to like see his relationship with Priscilla that much. And it's just
No.
like what they chose to show and what stories they chose to tell and what they chose to not show are just incredibly puzzling. And it
Right.
just it would have almost worked better if they maybe framed it like jobs in a way, right? Where it's like Elvis around these three key performances and you get these three key performances as like the driving parts of each act and then like these characters are popping in and out around each one. You kind of see these conflicts arising in a sense, but just
Right.
really strange.
Yeah, well, I think there was such a great opportunity just as the real life story. It's like you could have juxtaposed Elvis's genuine, like heartfelt desires over like things he believed in and things he felt about race and society and stuff, and you could have juxtaposed that with like how he also was super naive, taken advantage of by the colonel and by his family and
Hmm.
the Memphis Mafia and stuff like that. Like, I think there's such a interesting way to tell that story about someone who had greater ambition and then by due to his own failings and also the people around him was held back from ever really attempting that ambition. And you get like that kind of nodded to with the if I can dream stuff. But
Yeah.
overall it's like we just kind of keep it moving. And like you said, his courtship, his marriage, his whole life with Priscilla Presley is completely skipped over, let alone any of their past relationships
Hmm.
after Priscilla leaves him. Like none of that's there. And we don't even really get to see him like fall down the rabbit hole with pills and stuff. It's just kind of
No.
nodded to. And like, oh, next thing we know, he's like they're using amphetamines on him, but like we kind of barely see it. It's like and like the hangers on that was the Memphis Mafia and his incompetent father. Like it's all still kind of just not really there, and we're just supposed to experience all this through the Colonel. So I think a lot of that is quite disappointing, just because you see how much potential there is in the story because of the history of it all.
Yeah, I think my main takeaway from this is Austin Butler's a superstar, dude. Like
Yeah.
he was incredible in this role, by far the best part. And you think about what what this could do for his career. I actually didn't even look at what movies he has coming out
He's going to be
next.
in Dune 2, baby, as
Oh
one
yeah,
of the
that's
Harkonnens.
right. That's right. I did know that actually, but yeah, he just feels like a rocky ship. Obviously, a standout from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Tex,
Right.
but really this is a big break. And I think about other like performances of these like big music biopics, and I think the one that this kind of like reminds me of most, maybe this is just like I'm stuck in it a little bit,
I think I know you were.
is I was gonna say Val Kilmer from The Doors. Honestly,
Mm,
was that who you were gonna
okay.
say?
No, no, no. I thought you were
Who were
thinking
you
more
gonna go with?
seriously. This kind of reminds me of Taron Egerton and Rocket Man a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the easy comparison, and the movie
Yeah.
feels like it too. A bit like I don't know, surreal at points, like almost
Right.
like. But yeah, Edgerton was came to mind as well. But Val Kilmer in The Doors is just
Hmm.
like so mesmerizing, and
Yeah.
he actually sang, which I give Kilmer so much credit for because he sounds
Right.
really
Yeah.
great.
To Butler's credit, out of necessity, he sang all of the '50s songs because the recordings of those songs are not high enough fidelity for the film. And then
Crazy.
he sang for the later stuff, but there was also a lot of digital use of Elvis's actual recordings. So yeah, it's still far from Bohemian Rhapsody, where Rami's just doing lip sync karaoke stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think Butler, for someone who's 30 years old and has been a bit of a journeyman, post Nickelodeon, like he hasn't had anything super big. The Tex Watson performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is clearly his biggest role to date, and that's still a supporting role. To have him beat out Harry Styles and Miles Teller and Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ansel Elgort for this role, and then crush it in the way he did. I think it definitely is a star-making performance. He's also going to be the star of the Apple series Masters of the Air, which is the sequel to Band of Brothers in the Pacific that's uh, been filming last year. So between that and Dune, we're going to get a lot more of Austin Butler. Now, Baz Luhrmann, of course, probably, who knows how long we have to wait for him. That's the way he moves. He said his next thing is expanding Australia with the additional footage that was cut into a 6-part series onto Hulu. It's like, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no.
But do your thing, my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, this movie almost nodded to the black influences of Elvis more than I expected. Like, you have Kelvin Harrison Jr. always
Mhm.
livening things up whenever he's on screen as BB King, and you also see Little Richard and Big Mama Thornton and stuff. And
And Arthur Crudup, played by our guy Gary Clark Jr. Hell yeah,
yes,
man.
shout out Gary Clark. Yeah, and like you see them there, right? And like you see like
Mhm.
they do a good job showing that like, yeah, Elvis was just kind of like he was about that Beale Street life, and like people used to belittle him and make fun of him when he was nothing, and like
Mhm.
due to obviously the racism of the time and all that stuff. But like that was his thing. And I just wish there was kind of a more succinct through line to that. But yeah, like a few of his conversations with BB King. But I think that's just something that's kind of outside of Baz Luhrmann's grasp, unfortunately. And also, like we said, the movie, due to its framing device with the Colonel, just really can't discuss that anymore because obviously the Colonel would not have that perspective. So, how'd you feel about hearing some of the soundtrack? You heard Doja Cat, you heard Denzel Curry, a bit like Moulin Rouge, bringing contemporary pop music into its musical, I
Yeah,
guess. But it was kind of like random to me, like when I first started hearing Doja Cat as Elvis is walking up Beale Street.
I completely agree. I didn't really work for me. It was definitely a choice, but um, yeah, did not work at all for me. Overall, I just really did not like a lot of this movie. I think there's really like those three key set pieces that probably saved it from
Uh-huh.
being a total wash. So, and Butler's performance, obviously, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to move off the movie if you have more to say, but I did have a question as like a final thought on it
Right.
for you. So, did you have any other comments?
I think it's just nice to see that this movie was successful at the box office, winning the weekend, beating out Top Gun, beating out Jurassic World. Not too long ago, In the Heights and West Side Story and Dear Evan Hansen all bombed to various degrees, and we were like, "Huh, is the musical biopic, musical film for adults dead?" Well, no. I mean, to see Elvis succeed in this way, and Elvis, not the most contemporary figure, still, but that's a nice sign for the overall health of the box office. So that is nice to see.
Who's the artist at this point that you think you want to see a biopic about?
Gosh, yeah, it's a great question.
There's so
You know,
many documentaries now. It's like,
I know I don't want to see the documentaries though.
yeah,
It's more fun. I still haven't seen Get On Up when Chadwick Boseman played was it James Brown.
yep,
Like once in a while, there's ones that kind of sneak under the radar like that. Yeah, I mean, Walk the Line is obviously so famous too. Like
hmm
when you nail these with great performers like that, obviously Joaquin Phoenix, like there and as Johnny Cash, like there's such richness for this as like a movie form. You know,
hmm
I feel like it has to be someone where the story is told, right? So you really can't be super contemporary, right? And I feel like Elvis's closest peer in terms of best-selling solo artists of all time, his closest peer is someone who would have been amazing for this, if not for other things that happened in his life. That, of course, is Michael Jackson. So,
mm,
like, who is kind of like next down the line? I don't have anyone that comes to mind, honestly. I mean, there's obviously people, but like, I
it's
don't know,
really
like
interesting
the
to
Rolling
think.
Stones or something. I don't know, like
Yeah,
anything like the '70s. There's so much fun stuff and the drugs and the girls and everything and the
yeah.
classic rock. Like I guess that's an obvious thing, but I'm not sure.
I feel like there's potential to maybe see a Kurt Cobain type
Yeah,
documentary
it's a
in
good
like the
call.
near future. But I think the one that I would like to see, although it could really crash and burn quickly, would be like a McCartney Lennon type biopic where it's kind
Mm,
of like juxtaposing their relationship. Um,
right.
yeah,
It'd
it's
be
just so
awfully
hard.
ambitious to try and do that right after the Beatles get back, getting
That
so well received and being so
exactly.
popular.
Yeah, but that's the one that definitely intrigues me most. I could maybe see them. Uh, Stevie Ray Vaughan didn't quite get there. Maybe a Jimi Hendrix one,
Right.
with like Woodstock or something like that. I
And
think would
like,
be
and
cool.
I think they've tried this before too, but like,
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
right. So I mean, recently we had Queen, we've had Elton John.
Hmm.
They're not going to do Michael Jackson. Oh, there's the Madonna one's coming up, right?
That's
Julia Garner
right.
was just cast.
Yep,
Obviously,
that's
that's
a
a
good one.
great subject. Oh wait, we just
Stevie
had Aretha
Wonder.
Franklin, which was so respect. Um, did they? I think they're doing a Whitney Houston one too at the show.
That'd be a good one. I'm sure they are. Um, yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's any other artists that come to mind. I think
Yes,
rap is interesting too.
Naomi Aki as
Oh,
Whitney Houston. I Want to Dance with Somebody comes out this Christmas.